Thanks for tuning into this broadcast. I'm your host, Niraj Shah, and on the sidelines of the JPMorgan India Investor Summit, we've got a very special guest, the CEO of Asia Pacific for JPMorgan, Filippo Gori, joins in right now. Filippo, hope all is safe.
Niraj, thank you very much for having us, for having me here. Yeah, everything is safe here in Hong Kong, and I hope everything is safe on your side in India as well.
Yeah. Well, I wish I was in the room exchanging a round of lemon. Filippo, let's talk about how are you seeing the world as you see it right now. In Asia Pacific, there is a lot of talk of M&A themes, etc., shaping up. What's your sense on that whole piece?
So thank you, Niraj. On the M&A side, I would say that the M&A activity in the region has been impacted because of the outlook and obviously also because of the tighter credit conditions. Nevertheless, I feel that there is a lot of dialogue that has picked up again in the region, and you can see some trends, some countries and some sectors that are becoming relevant again. In terms of countries, I would say Japan is very active. And so does China. And in that context, even India is becoming more and more active. And I would probably compare India to the way China was kind of a decade ago in the beginning of a wave of M&A transactions that then took place in China. In terms of sectors, as you and I have spoken earlier, the two critical ones right now are TMT and healthcare that are becoming pretty much the talks of town that everybody wants to be involved in.
You reckon there could be, from an India perspective, do you reckon there could be inbound action into these spaces? Because the one thing that we've seen, at least in the listed space, is that the valuations of almost everything in this space has inched up quite considerably from what it used to be. So could there still be interest?
Yes, I believe so. And in tech, for sure, the interest is there, not only in India, but regionally, and I would say globally, consistently. And yes, the valuations have inched up, but the demand and it's still there. And I believe that the demand is still there for India and good Indian companies which have a sound business model will receive investments that maybe 10 years ago would have been the 50 to 100 million, and now it's in the billions, because there is the perception globally that also India is on the cusp of a digital, I don't know whether you want to call it transformation or revolution, but definitely what India's done over the last 6 months or so, for instance, and we see it in our day-to-day lives and with our colleagues, 99% of them working from home, it's definitely been a big step forward in the digital space. And therefore, the global interest is becoming more and more relevant. In that context, you have some blockbusters deals, Geo and everything else that has happened around that, but others as well that have definitely stoked the interest of global players in that context.
Somebody that I was speaking to earlier, Filippo, referred to the point that people who make the highways don't benefit, but people who use the highways benefit. And in that fashion, the infrastructure makers in this whole internet ecosystem may not necessarily benefit, but if they make a good ecosystem, that a lot of other things will come out and benefit out of it. Do you reckon that could be the case in India too?
Look, I hadn't heard about that saying before, so I need to reconcile myself with it a little bit. In general, I think if you build a good ecosystem, the whole infrastructure around it and the whole employment and so on and so forth, and the country in general will benefit. Whether it benefits more certain players than others, it's not up to me to say, but I'm a true believer that the ecosystem helps, having great ecosystems helps countries' improvements in that sense. So having both the highways and the cars that go on the highways helps.
Okay. So am I understanding this correctly, that in the China plus one theme that everybody's talking about, with more fervor in a post-COVID world than a pre-COVID world. You think in India, telecom, TMT, and healthcare would be the beneficiaries, not necessarily manufacturing.
So, Niraj, that's a very good point. I would say, first and foremost, the China plus one narrative has been there now for a while. I would say at least for 5 years. And we have observed a phase one of the China plus one narrative, a phase two, and then there's the long-term China plus one narrative, where I believe that India can play a role, especially in tech, for the things I've just told you earlier on about the digital transformation and so on and so forth. Has there been a shift in manufacturing or supply chain in general in the tech space in other countries over the last 3 years or so? I would say the answer is yes. No country, at the same time, I want to make the statement that no country in the world yet seem able to replace China as the IT factory of the world. But the shift in supply chain manufacturing for tech is there for all the things that you just mentioned. In that context, I think India can play a very important role together with other Southeast Asian countries, primarily Vietnam and Thailand, I would say.
Okay. Filippo, just one small clarity. When you're talking about tech, are you referring to Indian IT service vendors as being the principal beneficiaries, or the entire ecosystem and maybe smaller companies in India which are hitherto not service companies but trying to be product companies also might benefit?
I think the latter, the broader definition of tech. I would not restrict the definition to just the broader TMT. I would say will be the beneficiary of this.
Okay. Filippo, what are the tail risks to this belief? What could derail this, if at all? This theory, I mean, this theory of China plus one shifting to TMT plus healthcare.
Niraj, that's a very good question. And the reason why I qualified at the beginning my answer by saying that the narrative has been there for a while is because in reality, it takes a long time to shift the supply chain. That's what the multinational corporations are telling us. To recreate a cluster, the ecosystem that I was telling you earlier takes years, is estimated it can take up to 5 years. So there is an element of, while the trend is there, we need to be patient because it will take a while. And what the multinational corporations are telling us is moving at time of COVID is very difficult. Shift production at time of COVID is super complicated. So I think time is gentleman in that sense, and it will help with the process, but it will take time. It will not be an overnight paradigm shift in that sense.
Yeah. Okay. Fair call. Filippo, one final question really on this conversation, and that is the blue-eyed boys of almost every investor when it comes to India are, aside of pharma, of course, specialty chemicals, back-end manufacturing, wherein the companies are saying that they are getting export orders from various countries in the Middle East and Asia Pacific region as well. Do you think that there could be small clusters of benefits, but as a large theme, they will not kind of come out and be the big winners?
I would say that first of all, I don't have the crystal ball in that sense. I'm just observing some of the trends that I'm seeing. Of course, there could be winners in some and clusters created in some of these other sectors. And by definitions, every time that we speak, we tend to generalize a little bit. So my earlier comments are referred to a broader trend that I'm seeing, but other sectors, of course, can benefit from the narrative. But time will be of the essence. In the sense, nothing will happen overnight.
Sure, I think that's a big qualifying statement, and people should take that on board. Don't expect instant results. But sorry, Filippo, you wanted to make a point?
No, that's the point, Niraj, that you just made.
Okay, great. Filippo Gori, I really appreciate you taking the time out and speaking to us today. Thanks so much and have a great conference.
Niraj, thank you for having us. It was a pleasure. Take care.
Likewise.